Okay, so we wanted to just provide context for the start of the field tour. So I happen to have these posters. I laid them out. They kind of show, the middle one shows a brief overview of our overall effort to remove Phragmites and restore wetlands of Great Salt Lake. And then the two on the side are the same. They're our strategic plan for Farmington Bay specifically, the lake bed of Farmington Bay. The plans here are 2023, so they're last year's. It's a little out of date, but you still get the idea. And then the tour today is going to focus around Teal Lake, which is this purple project area. And so basically what we want you to understand is we have this massive, long, ongoing effort to remove Phragmites, and then once removed, we're doing revegetation, today's focus. But if you think that the wetland that we're going to go look at today doesn't look that good, and you're like, I don't know what these guys are talking about, this wetland sucks, we're going to, I'll pass around these photos. These are, I would say, representative. They're a slightly different site that's a little further down the dike, but they're a representative before photo. They're all similar photos, so you can just pass all the photos out. But basically, all these wetlands were entirely invaded with Phragmites along these dike lines, and a lot of the edges of the impoundments, and then especially the lake bed. So our project area for forestry, fire, and site lands is the lake bed. And all of these project areas were almost entirely invaded. So the site that we're looking at today, we made a ton of progress. There's still a lot of Phragmites, but we have actually made our way into the revegetation phase. So for the last handful of years, we've been experimenting with seeding and planting. And let's see, maybe I'll pass it to Chad if he has anything to share Phragmites control-wise.
Yeah, Chad, how have you all coordinated here and across sites on Great Salt Lake?
Yeah, so again, Keith kind of gave you the background of this area. I'll get in a little more detail about that. So Keith and Forestry, Fire, and State Lands has basically been treating and doing a bunch of work on all this area that is outside of this dike that we're going to be driving down. And then the Division of Wildlife has been doing all these treatments inside of the dike. So we try and coordinate our treatments where we're both working on near the same area. And that helps in a number of different ways, not only just logistically and whatnot, but also with water management, which is a huge part of frag control. If you don't have your water management right, then you are basically throwing money to the wind. So it really helps that we're doing these treatments together right next to each other. The area inside the dike, you'll notice as you drive out there, there's a huge, nice open pond out there with a ton of birds and stuff. Back in 2012, when I was trying to start my master's project, I was looking for these areas that had huge patches of virgin Phragmites that have never been touched before. And I was looking for some pretty big patches. I had 5 different treatment blocks that were 3 acres each, so I needed 15 plus acres. This was one of those sites. It was 12-foot tall frag, 100% cover through the whole area. It's actually really phenomenal what we've been able to do out here, and then you can see everything outside the dike. As Keith said, it was the same way years ago. What's really cool is I'd say we have a number of sites like this across all these waterfowl management areas that look like this now. So, yeah.
Great. So Keith, you're going to talk about the planting here and maybe the pollinator program.
Yeah, so maybe not yet, but you'll look behind you, but maybe not yet. Right behind you is an area that we seeded that kind of captures, you know what, let's just turn around and look at it now. I'll just whisper in your ear from behind. So the borrow ditch right in front of you, that far side was all invaded with Phragmites. And then this playa out there. A lot of it historically was playa, but you can see in the wetter areas there's still a little bit of Phragmites. That was all invaded. And then beyond it, we have a lot of dead Phragmites that we're still working on. So with our seeding technique, we stratify seed to get it ripe for germination. Then we come through with pull a disc plow to prep the soil. Mainly we're doing that to capture the seed so it doesn't wash away, and then also to provide a diversity of kind of micro elevation, micro topography in case things dry up. And so speaking of it drying up, you can see the dry area. You can still see a little bit of the tracks. So that was an area that we plowed and we seeded, and it was wet and perfect when we did it. And then like 2 days later, boom, the water disappeared. It dried up. So we didn't have water on there long enough, and we didn't have anything germinate. And then in that open water, if you were to go out there or walk around, you'll find little bits of saltgrass growing in there. So anywhere we did have moisture, we had germination. And then back to the borrow ditch here, on both sides of it, we spread a bunch of seed at the same time. We distance seeded the edge of this borrow ditch, and we got great germination of both saltgrass and scratchgrass. So those kind of line the toe of the dike, which will help protect for Phragmites reinvasion. And then hopefully we'll get some of that transferring to the other side of the borrow ditch as we continue to remove that Phragmites. And then just yesterday, we had a Utah Conservation Corps crew come through with a handful, I think maybe about 1,000 of the pollinator plants that we receive from the Pollinator Habitat Program. So they're little babies that are intermixed in there, but we planted about 1,000 plants. And that's kind of illustrating this site here. We had success with our workhorse species, claiming that area, and we feel good about not having Phragmites reinvade immediately and quickly. So then we brought our diversity in, and that's one of the first places where we actually had all those things line up.
I have one more comment. I'm not staying very close to you. Ben from Utah Conservation Corps, I don't mean to embarrass you, but we had an interesting conversation at lunch, and we were just talking about capacity for, well, UCC has done a lot of weed control, but you also do a fair amount of native seed collecting. And so we were talking about creative ways to be thinking about native wetland seed collecting. If you're writing a grant for restoration project, putting in time for UCC crews to potentially collect seed, he was able to tell me kind of what the weekly charge is. So you could have a week a month, for instance, if you needed help. Even for a private native plant nursery or seed collector, if the project is going on public lands, then that's within the mission of UCC, right?
To my understanding, yeah.
And we might have to look at the fine print a little bit, but I thought that was an interesting idea. So chat with Ben if you want to know more about that.
Thanks, Brian.
Okay.
What else to talk? Is there
that's-
anything else you want?
I think
here?
we should go to the demo.
Yeah, we got a question.
Oh yeah, question from Heidi.
You want me to speak? You could just repeat.
I'll repeat it. Yeah.
So, what are your long-term objectives for this previously open mudflat that was invaded by Phragmites, and now you're seeding it? Is there any chance of recovering it to a mudflat stage? And you know where I'm coming from.
Yeah. So I would say in general, you know. Okay, right. The question is, what are our long-term goals specifically with this mudflat habitat that was invaded with Phragmites? We removed Phragmites. What's our long-term goal for that mudflat? I would say in all of these areas, they have been so heavily invaded with Phragmites. We remove Phragmites and then see what we get hydrology-wise. So all the hydrology is so significantly altered with this huge rhizome mat and all the trapping of this sediment. So once we remove Phragmites, we start to get an idea of what kind of habitat hydrologically we're looking at. And then we're trying to not go completely against the grain for something that we can't recreate. Like, so if it's going to be an emergent wetland, it's going to be an emergent wetland. Here, we know the hydrology is this area dries up and it forms mudflat. And so with the saltgrass seeding that I did out here, my aim is to secure the edges of the wet areas, because that's where Phragmites is going to reinvade, and then we're fine with the rest of it remaining unvegetated. Typically it gets a lot of water in the spring and it evaporates off pretty quickly, which creates that great shorebird habitat. So speaking of, we're working with Sageland Collaborative and their big shorebird survey effort on Great Salt Lake to do finer detail surveys. And this is one of our survey sites where we're looking at before and after Phragmites and how Phragmites treatments impacts shorebirds. And that the borrow ditch I was just referring to and the mudflat this spring, and actually also in the fall survey in August, we had really high bird numbers. So in the past, we didn't really have any birds here. Both of those past surveys, we had avocets, stilts, ibis, and then I can't remember whether it was fall or spring, but we had like several hundred killdeer out on the mudflat. So we're excited to see all the birds come back in and use these areas. Yeah.
I'll just add a little bit something to that, and Dave, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the Till Lake unit itself, within the dike there, they run that as kind of a summer drawdown unit. So this is the most water it's seen probably since March. Just a couple weeks ago, there was probably only half the water you see there. So they are creating some mudflat and playa during the summer and spring and whatnot.
And in the shorebird survey, that same survey where we had all the birds here, within the unit, it was our highest cover of birds. I mean, there was at least 10 different species, and it took us forever to survey this because we had thousands of birds on Teal Lake, all shorebirds.
Can I ask a question?
Yep, go
I was
for it.
wondering what was in your pollinator mix.
So this one here, I think was 12 different species. I'm not going to remember them all, but we had swamp milkweed, showy milkweed. We had a mint teucrium. We had verbena. I think we had a bunch grass. I think we had alkali succotan. I don't think that one made it here. We might have. Oh no, yeah, we had the primrose. What's the wetland primrose? Evening primrose. We had a primrose species, and then we did have the water groundsel, the Senecio hydrophilus. Yeah. So I think in general, the kits that we got, Mindy can correct me, but I think we had about 20 different species. And when we were dividing them up between all the sites, we were trying to get all 20 species at each site. But this one only ended up with 12 different species, but still good diversity. Yeah. And we'll see a lot, at our other stops, we'll see a lot more of the seeding and talk more about just like the hydrologic extremes and what we're seeing